Well, happy Wednesday to each and every one of you. Tonight I've brought you to one of my favorite places. It is my backyard, or actually your backyard. This is the church's house. You guys just let me live here in exchange for sermons and I don't know what else. But thank you for that. It's one of my favorite spots to just kind of sit and relax and be and experience creation and all of the goodness that comes from it. I've brought you here tonight because I want to introduce you to a new friend of mine. His name is Goldie, and he is a Honeycrisp apple tree, and he's a new addition here at the parsonage. We named him Goldie because Honeycrisp apples come from the University of Minnesota, and so Goldie seemed like a great name. I love this little guy. He's one of my favorite parts of the day. I find that when I come home, the first thing that I do is not run inside, not even take my shoes off or just take a break, but it's to walk back out here, either to the back of the garage when it's cold, or just out of the porch here to check in on this apple tree. We've only had him for about a week, but things seem to be going good so far. But there was a lot of work and effort put in to getting him into the backyard. There was, of course, getting him in the car and over here, digging a hole, making sure the hole was the right depth and size and shape, making sure that the wind doesn't blow him too much. And then, of course, the cold and the nasty kind of sleet that we got this weekend didn't mess with him so much either. But it's been quite fun to focus on this tree. And I've been doing some thinking and reflecting on why it is that I'm caring for this tree so much. I suppose that each and every one of us have found a thing that we are maybe doing more so than usual in these times when we are redirecting our energies and efforts in different ways. And as I've been doing kind of some thinking and reflecting on that, I remembered this quote that's attributed to Martin Luther. And it's this: if I thought the world were ending tomorrow, I would plant an apple tree. It's a great quote, and it really makes you think about perhaps our priorities here in this world. I love that quote because it really gets to the thing that's at the heart of our faith. It reminds us that our faith is not even about our relationship with God or us personally. It's about our relationship with the others, our relationship with our neighbors, folks who will come next, generations after us. Now, it's likely that this quote wasn't actually said by Martin Luther. It doesn't show up in books until the mid-1940s. Some folks think it came out of Nazi Germany in the 1940s, that Lutherans in the German confessing church there came up with this saying of Martin Luther to help give people strength to deal with all of the awful things happening in that part of the world with the Holocaust, amongst other things. This kind of phrase that makes us think about, even in the midst of bad situations, our faith, our God, always calls us forward to love and serve, not for the sake of ourselves, but for the sake of the other. And so thinking and reflecting on that this week, I wanted to share with you tonight one of my favorite stories. It comes from the Gospel of Luke, the 10th chapter. You might know it as the parable of the Good Samaritan. But I like it because it really starts as being the story of a lawyer, of a person who's walking along with Jesus on his way to Jerusalem and just wants to know, what are the marks of a true follower, a true believer? What is it that I have to do? A question that I think each and every one of us has asked at one point. And so think about that as we hear these words, starting at the 25th verse. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" The lawyer answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength, and with all of your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus answered him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, the lawyer asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied with this parable. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance there was a priest going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed on by the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place, saw the man and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went towards him and bandaged his wounds, and having poured wine and oil on them, he put him on an animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 coins, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him. When I come back, I will repay you whatever more that you spend." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And the lawyer said, "The one who showed mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." There's a really great thought experiment that is attributed to Martin Luther King Jr. having to do with this parable. One that I think I want us to reflect and pray on today. Martin Luther King Jr. says that when the priest and the Levite come upon this man on the side of the road, they ask the question, "If I go and help the man, what will happen to me?" But when the Samaritan comes upon the man, he asks the question, "If I don't help this man, what will happen to him?" It's a tough question, but a great one. One to remember certainly now in these days. With lots of problems and challenges in this world, we can get very caught up with the things that affect us personally, the things that have made our lives a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult. But even in these times, even in the worst of times, our faith in Jesus reminds us that we are called to live our lives not for the sake of ourselves, but for the sake of our neighbors, for the sake of the other, the stranger, and even those who come after us. And so I'm thankful today. I am thankful all the time. And I have been thankful for the last couple months for those of you who have found ways to still go and do likewise, to find ways to be disciples in these new times, whether that's phone calls or letters or parades or quilts, even though you're sewing at home, whatever it may be. And so I'm going to issue a challenge tonight as you reflect on these things, as you reflect on what it means to be someone who loves your neighbor, sometimes even more than we love ourselves. What are some ways that we can go and do likewise? What are some ways in these times where we can't go much of anywhere that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world, that we can continue to live into this calling that God has in mind for us? Think about that today. Think about that always. And remember that even if the world were ending tomorrow, Martin Luther would have planted an apple tree, or at least someone thought that they would plant an apple tree. If all of the things that we knew or understood as normal were coming to an end, if things might not ever go back to the way that we think they should be, or maybe they won't go back to the way that things used to be, what would you do? What will we do? Good question to think on. Start with these thoughts. If we don't do something, what will happen to them? Not what will happen to us, but what will happen to them, to our neighbors, to the ones who rely on the ministry that we do together, on the ways that we live our faith out loud. What also is the legacy that we want to leave? I might not be the one who gets to enjoy these apples for years and years to come, but the next people will, and the people after that, and the people after that, and the people after that, so long as I don't kill the tree first, I suppose. But I'm going to work hard to make sure that it stays alive, even if I never get to enjoy any apples from Goldie over here. If the world were ending tomorrow, would you plant an apple tree? Would you do something else? I don't know. Pray and think on that tonight. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your generosity. Now go and do likewise. Thanks be to God.